Hello, welcome to the Cine Pulp channel. In this video, I will tell the story of the series Night Sky, released in 2022. It's a very interesting series about a couple who discover a portal to another world in their backyard. But before anything else, I ask you to support the channel by liking this video and subscribing to the channel, especially because we would like to get to 1,000 subs as soon as possible. Doing that helps us bring new and exclusive content to you. Alright, that being said, let's get to the video. Irene and Franklin York have been married for many years, and they have a secret they've always kept hidden. In their storage room, there was a secret entrance that led to a tunnel and ended at a place where there was this peculiar door. Beyond that door, there was a kind of elevator. When the elevator was used, something strange happened, and the couple would end up in a room with a huge glass window, offering a view of the landscape of a mysterious world. The characters didn't know what that room was, who built it, or what world it was. However, they knew that it wasn't possible to walk on the surface of that unknown place. Because on one occasion, they experimented by placing mice outside the room, and the rodents died shortly after being exposed to the atmosphere of that mysterious planet. For years, Irene and Franklin visited that place, but all they ever saw was the same landscape. That majestic place had become common to them. Even so, Irene felt there was a reason they had made that discovery. She continued to believe they were special in some way and that there was a mission they were supposed to fulfill. Now older, she was a bit ill. The elderly couple also had to deal with the problems that old age brings, including people's feelings that they were becoming senile and no longer fit to live independently. For this reason, Irene and Franklin's granddaughter, Denise, spoke to Franklin, trying to convince him to consider moving from their current residence to a place where they would have more family support. Still, the elderly couple didn't want to leave the place where they had always lived, and especially the special room, which was their secret alone. Another problem the elderly couple had was their nosy neighbor, Byron. He kept meddling in their lives and spying on them. One random night, he saw Irene and Franklin entering the shed outside the house, and from then on, he began to suspect they were hiding something inside. Another interesting fact to mention is that the main couple had a son named Michael. He was Denise's father, because Michael took his own life years ago. And of course, this was something Franklin and Irene could never completely overcome. Irene felt somewhat depressed now, and it was affecting her health, which was only getting worse. It's said that a few years ago, she had an accident where she fell, suffering a great impact, and since then, her health had never been the same. This made her use a wheelchair when it was necessary to walk. Because of this, she decided to take an unexpected step, aiming to discover if there was any meaning in her and Franklin having found the mysterious room. She left a letter for her husband, saying goodbye and explaining her plan. In the letter, she said she would open the door to the mysterious room that led to the outside environment of that unknown world. Even knowing that what happened to the mice in the past would probably happen to her, Irene still had some hope that she would survive when she went outside. But before she could do that, when she was about to open the door, she found an intruder in the mysterious room. She had no idea how he got there. Irene contemplated a frightening possibility, that the man had come from the unknown world. So, she did the best she could with her physical ability to go and ask her husband for help. When Franklin realizes that she went out alone, he becomes extremely worried. Once he understands what is happening, he moves to get the visitor, who is quite injured. There was blood on the man's body, but no apparent wounds, which could indicate that all the blood might belong to someone else. They place the visitor in one of the rooms in the house. Then Franklin calls the police without Irene knowing. However, when she finds out, she tries in every way to convince her husband that they shouldn't tell the police about the man. This is because she thought he was special and that he could help her understand more about the mysterious room. In the end, Irene's stubbornness wins, and Franklin does what she wants. So, when the police officer arrives at the house, they manage to send him away, saying that they had the impression they saw someone near the house, but it was all just a misunderstanding, and in the end, it was nothing serious. From then on, our story splits into two parts. One focuses on the elderly couple, and the other takes place in Argentina, in a somewhat isolated place where a mother, Stella, and her daughter, Tony, live. Tony was at an age where she started to question why she and her mother had to live so isolated, in the same house where several of their ancestors lived. Stella always said they were special and had a great responsibility given to them, but she couldn't reveal what it was until Tony was of the appropriate age. The teenager felt out of place because everyone considered her and her mother very strange. It turns out that Stella also had a room similar to Irene and Franklin's, located inside the chapel. The only way to reach it was through a secret entrance. We see that on the door to the room, there was a strange sphere. Back to the elderly couple, they rummage through the visitor's backpack and find some old gold coins, which were 17th century Spanish doubloons. But the strangest thing was that it was not possible to identify where those coins were minted. Besides the coins, there was a piece of unknown rectangular stone and a copy of The Count of Monte Cristo. Franklin remains firm in his opinion that they should call the police or a doctor, or maybe both, to take care of the visitor. But Irene didn't want that. She felt she was finally close to understanding more about the mysterious room and didn't want to ruin it. What ends up happening is that the elderly couple takes care of the injured man themselves. After some time, the visitor begins to show some improvement. But unfortunately, he didn't remember much, or at least that's what he said. He said his name is Jude, but he didn't know how he ended up there or for what purpose. While all this is happening, Byron decides to run for the position of councilman. He felt that his former neighbors didn't take him seriously and hoped that in this town, things would be different. But the thing is, he was so annoying and irritating that just moving to a different town wasn't going to change that. Back in Argentina, Stella discovers that an old acquaintance came to visit her. His name is Cornelius, and it was clear that Stella was not very happy to see him. Meanwhile, Jude acts enigmatically. In the middle of the night, he wakes up, sneaks out of his room, and grabs a knife from the kitchen. Then he goes to the bathroom and uses the knife to remove something from his leg. We see him extracting some kind of strange device. Jude then breaks it, and from inside the device, he removes a wire or pendant. After that, we see him leaving the house and presumably going to the special room. In Argentina, Cornelius tells Stella that she had to go on a special mission. She would have to make a long journey and should take her daughter along. The woman didn't want to take Tony because she felt she wasn't ready. But Cornelius makes it clear that Stella had no choice. At the Yorks' house, the lights start to flicker strangely since the visitor's arrival. As for Jude, he was much better. While Irene was more friendly and receptive to him, old Franklin remained wary and constantly reminded the visitor that he should be on his way as soon as possible. Franklin also found it strange that Jude never asked for the police or any help. He seemed to be hiding something, and the old man really couldn't believe the visitor's story that he had no memories of his past. A sphere inside a jar was another strange item Irene found among Jude's belongings. As for Byron, it turns out he forged the signatures that would allow him to run for councilman. Because of this, he is forced to withdraw his candidacy, which leaves him quite frustrated. Increasingly convinced that Jude was a con artist trying to pull some kind of scam and taking advantage of Irene's goodwill, Franklin decides to get rid of him without his wife knowing. Under the pretext of going out with Jude so the two could get to know each other better, Franklin ends up revealing to the young man, in the middle of the road, that he wanted Jude to leave. Franklin gives the man $5,000 and says he didn't know and didn't care to know what kind of scam he was planning against his hosts. All he wanted was for Jude to go his way. $5,000 would give him a good start. But Jude says he wasn't a bad person and didn't want to harm anyone. He refuses the money Franklin offered him and gets out of the car, ready to go who knows where. Before leaving, he just asks Franklin to thank Irene on his behalf. As he was leaving, Franklin regrets what he did and asks Jude to come back, something the visitor seemed to secretly hope for. At home, Irene investigates the strange sphere, taking it out of the jar. At a certain point, a metallic, shrill sound emanates around her. Irene places the sphere on the table, and shortly after, the table disappears as if the sphere had transported it to another place. Carefully, the elderly woman retrieves the sphere, putting it back in the jar. Suddenly, Denise, Irene's granddaughter, shows up for a surprise visit. While the two were talking, Franklin, accompanied by Jude, appears. Denise is confused and worried, wondering who this man was in her grandparents' house. Irene and Franklin say that Jude was a caregiver they hired to help them with household chores and anything else they needed. The elderly woman reminds her granddaughter that she herself had recommended they hire someone to help them. But Denise finds it strange that this happened so suddenly. Although clearly worried, she decides that her grandparents are adults and can make their own decisions. As she was leaving, Jude tries to assure Denise that he was there just to help Franklin and Irene, and therefore, Denise had nothing to worry about. More than that, he recommends that she come visit them whenever she wants to make sure everything is fine. After that, we see Jude and Irene talking alone. She talks about her son who died and gets emotional. Then, Jude tells her that he had come to Farnsworth for a reason, which was to find his father. And then he asks Irene to help him with this task, to which she responds positively. Meanwhile, Franklin, in the bathroom, finds the knife Jude used before, stained with blood. And in the sink, he sees what looks like a small necklace, which was inside the device Jude extracted. Suddenly, we see the fat politician, totally frustrated with everything that had happened, snooping around the York storage room, and he finds the entrance to the mysterious room. With no choice, Stella decides to reveal the whole truth to her daughter. She says that their family had been protecting this secret place for 300 years. Going through the chapel, they pass through a secret entrance and end up in a corridor where that enigmatic door was. Stella opens the door and, using a strange panel with unknown symbols, she makes some kind of configuration. Mother and daughter enter the mysterious elevator. Stella says that it's not the elevator moving, but them. We see everything change around them. When the two step out of the elevator, we discover that they are in Newark, a city in New Jersey, United States. After walking for a while, they encounter an American man who Stella says is an ally. And that's the end of our video, folks. I recapped the first 3 episodes of the first season of Night Sky. If you want me to make more videos about this series, like this video, subscribe to the channel and comment asking for more. That helps me a lot. Well, that's it for this video. See you in the next one, and goodbye.